couple ways that you can use buttons and images in fun ways in WizCreate. To add a button, go to your Objects menu and tap the Button object. So that's going to throw a button onto your page. To move it, you just tap and hold and drag it to wherever you would like it to be. Once it's where you like it to be, you can also resize it by tapping and dragging just kind of on the edge of the object. So that looks good. Now let's change the way it looks. So to open up its editor, tap the button, and then the button object editor appears. The first thing to be in a really good habit of doing is changing the name of your objects. So I'm going to tap the name property, and I'm going to change this one to flower. I'm going to click the gray X to delete the letters that are there, and just type in flower, enter, and it saves. So notice there's a difference between the name and the title. The name is for you. The name is what you're going to reference when you're building the app, and it's going to help you remember what the button is, what the image is, what that object is based on the name you gave it. The title is different. The title is what a user can see. It's shown on the button. In this case, I actually don't want a title on this button. I'm going to replace it with a picture. So I'm going to open up the title property, hit the gray X to delete what's there, and click Save and leave it empty. You can see now there are no words in my button. The next thing I want to do is make the button see-through. To do that, I go to its Style property, and then in the list, I select Transparent. And then the last thing to do is to get rid of that border. To do that, I go into Border Thickness and change 2 down to 0 by dragging down to the left. Clicking Save. Now my button is basically invisible back there. It's still usable. Somebody can still click it, but nobody can see it. It's not very obvious. So I want to open up the Image property to give this button an image. I'm going to go into the WizCreate Media Library, and under Cartoons and then Plants, I'm going to pick a flower that might blend in there. That pink rose looks nice. By the way, when you're looking through the media library, anything with a checkered background, that means its background is see-through. So if you want it to be clear and kind of blend into its environment, make sure you're looking for ones that have a checkered background. As opposed to this tree, it has a white background, which means if I select it, there's going to be a white square around it. So I'm going to go with this one, the pink rose. You can see that's looking pretty good back there. What I want to happen when this button is pressed is I want it to play a little sound. So let's go into its scripting. Remember, scripting is like a set of instructions that when the object is triggered, it's going to look for its instructions and then carry them out. So the trigger for a button is when the button is touched. If I open its trigger, its list of scripts would be listed here. We haven't given it any instructions. There's no scripts listed here. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to click the green plus sign. And then this is the script library that pops up. To navigate through this, you can open each section and check out what's in each section. There's a lot of things to choose from here. And then to scroll through here, you just use your finger and drag through. Now, my finger, I'm dragging kind of in the center of this menu here. If you were to drag like out here on the side or over here on the side, it's going to close that menu that's open, just like that. So be careful with that. Make sure your finger's right in the middle of the menu so that you don't accidentally exit it. Okay, back to what we were doing. To play a sound, the script's going to be in Movies, Maps, and Sounds, and we want the script right here. It's called Play Sound. When you click that, it's going to open up the script with some properties for you to configure so that you change the way that the script acts. So the next thing we need to do is pick the sound that's going to be played when the button is touched. So I'm going to open up the Media Library by clicking the Sound property, and I think there's kind of a magical little noise under Miscellaneous. I'm going to scroll through here. Again, my finger's in the middle of the menu. And then to preview the way that a sound sounds, to preview a sound, you want to tap the blue information circle there. And then when you tap it, you're going to get a little preview. If that sound isn't what you want, you can just click the back arrow back to the Miscellaneous library or the back arrow back to the main library. Or if it is what you want, then once you're in there, you can either click exactly that, or I'm going to show you that one more time. Because after you've previewed it, you can also save it from that menu as well. So I'm scrolling pretty quick back to the M's. In the preview window, if you click Save, that will also save it to your script. So we've chosen our sound. Let's run our app and make sure it works. I'm going to tap the rose, and it played our sound. Perfect. So I'm going to click Done to get back to development mode. So dragging back to the right, I'm now back in my script library. Dragging back to the right again, I'm in my scripting trigger library. And if I tap the Properties tab, I am back in the Properties for the button. So that's just how you navigate through these things. I'm just using my finger to drag left and right. So let's add a button that has some words on it. Back into your Objects menu, select a button. I'm going to drag this one over the door, and I want it to say Enter. I'm going to drag it so that it's about the same size as the door. I'm going to open up its properties, click the name, and change button number 2 to say Door so that it's a lot more descriptive in a way that makes sense. The title, I actually want a title this time. So I'm going to open that up, hit the gray X to delete title here, and I'm going to type Enter, maybe with a ... Clicking Save, you can see it changes in the background to say Enter. Now, I still want to be able to see my door. So I'm going to go back into Style, select Transparent, but I don't want a border. So I'm going to go to Border Thickness and drag that back to 0, just like we did with the flower. So clicking Save, I'm going to hit Exit there, and we can see how this looks. You can see it says Enter. I want it to look a little bit more stylized, kind of like the words that are in this sign here. So I'm going to click that again to open up its properties, and I'm going to go into the Font property. So there's one here that might fit. It's called Marker Felt. So I've selected that. I'm also going to use the wheel on the side here, just dragging my finger to make the font just a little bit bigger. So once I've got it where I want it, I click Save, and then I can see how it looks back in the background there. The last thing I want to do is change the text color by clicking the text color property. A little menu is going to pop up for me to choose a color from. So I'm going to go with something that just kind of matches the environment, maybe a nice red color to match the bricks that are back there. And then click Save, and you can see it updates right away. So when someone taps this button, I also want a sound to play. I'm going to go back into my scripting through the trigger, click the green plus sign to open up the script library, go into Movies, Maps, and Sounds, and select Play Sound. And in the media library, there's a knocking sound. Door knocking, it's under Miscellaneous. I want to preview what Gentle one sounds like. That sounds okay. I'm going to click Save, and now that button makes a noise. Let's click Run and test that out. I'm going to click Run from the main development mode here with this green button. Okay, so both of our buttons are making noises. So the last thing I want to do is I want a button that is completely sneaky. You're not really going to know it's there if you're a user. So the reason we want that to be sneaky is we want it to make a different object appear or disappear. I'm going to go back into Objects, back into Button, and just what we've been doing so far by changing the properties, I want this one to be completely see-through by the end. I'm just going to place it over here by the actually. Let's hide this one on this book down here like that might be a clue. Okay, I'm going to tap in there, and I'm going to give this one the name of Book because it's on top of the book. I'm going to delete the words in the title and click Save. Going to change the style to transparent and the border thickness to 0. So by this point, you should probably be getting the hang of that part. So if I exit that, you can see that's a really sneaky button. No one knows it's there. It's completely see-through. But if you tap there, it's still there. By the way, if you ever have a button that you've made it so sneaky that you forgot where it was, there's an easy way to find it again. If you tap anywhere in your background to bring up the page editor, and you go to your Objects tab, you can see a list of all the objects that you have on your page. This is why it's really helpful to give your buttons or objects names that make sense so that you can remember what they are when you see them in a big long list like this. So in this case, we named that one Book. If I click it, then I'm in the button's object editor. So just a little tip if you forget where you put your buttons. So let's think about what we want this Book Clue button to do. What might be cool is to have an image that's hidden until someone taps this book. So to do that, I'm going to go into my Object menu, I'm going to select image, and then I'm going to drag that to be maybe in a nice little hiding place, maybe on the window. What might be fun is if there's almost like a person that'll look out the window when that button's pressed. I'm just dragging this around to resize it. And then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to give it a name called Person in Window. And then I'm going to go to the image property to find an image that'll maybe do that for me. So in the media library, let's go to cartoons and then people. Now remember, I'm looking for one that has a checkered background. Let's do that. Let's use this cute little frog. And maybe what we'll do instead is have the frog here on the bench, that when you tap the book, the frog appears. So because I'm changing the function there, I'm going to change the name of the image to frog. Okay. Let's open up the Book Buttons scripting library. And when this button is touched, we want to set the property of the frog image to show. So there's a script called show object, almost down at the bottom here. I'm going to tap that. When the button is touched, we want it to show an object. So we need to tell it what kind of object and what the object's name is. So the frog is an image object, and the name of that image object is frog. For the transition, I like dissolve, so I'm going to pick that one. There's a bunch of different ones that you can choose from here, and the way that you can test those out is just pick one, run your app, push the button, see how it looks, and then decide which one you like. Dissolve is my favorite, so that's what I'm going to go with. What this is going to do is show the object, which means if I run my app right now and I tap this book button, it's technically working. It's showing me that frog, but the thing is we could see the frog to begin with, so we don't actually see any difference there. So let's go back into development mode and let's make it so that right now, at the first glance, you can't see that frog until the button is touched. To do that, open up the frog's properties and toggle the visible property. So you can see in the background there, as I turn that off and on, that frog is disappearing and reappearing. That's basically what the script is going to do, but we want it to be not visible when the app is run. Okay, let's run our app one more time. Tap the book button and the frog appears. And our rose makes a magical little noise. And our door with some text makes a knocking noise. Within the scripting for making things visible or not visible in your script library, there's a bunch of different options. I'm going to open back up the script library under animation and set properties. There's hide object, which does the opposite of what we just did with show object. And then scrolling almost down to the very bottom, there's one called set visibility, that if you were to use that, you would select the object type and the name just like we did before, but then you'd have the ability to say on or off. So this one gives you a little bit of a different control. There's one more. I'm going to drag back to my script library just to show you what it is. Under animation and set properties, scrolling almost down to the bottom of that section, there's one called toggle visibility. Toggling is kind of like a light switch, kind of like we were doing with the image object when I was turning it off and on a minute ago. And so what that's going to do, I'm going to go into image and select frog and dissolve. One more little tip on scripting. So remember, I've got show object, which is a script that's finished. I've got set visibility, which is a script that I didn't even finish. I just showed it to you. I threw it on my list here. So let's get rid of the set visibility one because I don't need it. To do that, I'm just going to click delete and say OK. And now you can see my list of scripts only has 2 in there. Let's say I change my mind and I want to use toggle visibility instead of show object. I can go into show object and I can turn this script off. Down here in the bottom left, currently it says script on. If I tap that, you can see it changes to script off. So dragging back to the top level, notice the left-hand side here, this one's not green anymore and this one is. So that means that now when this is triggered, when this button is touched, it's going to look at its instructions. It's going to ignore this one and only do this one. So let's test that out. I'm going to click Run, and now I'm going to touch my book button, and the frog appears. If I touch it again, the frog disappears. So that's what toggle visibility means. So you have a couple different options: hide object, show object, set visibility, or toggle visibility. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of a bunch of different things that you can do with button objects, different ways they can look using images, text, or being totally clear, and different things you can do with it, from playing sounds to hiding things to a bunch of different things that we didn't even talk about in that script library. Happy app making!